Hello, welcome to another one of our video tutorials on how to approach a particular CMI assignment. And in this case we're going to look at Unit 715, Strategic Approaches to Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. My name is Brent Warren, I'm the Training Director and one of the Senior Tutors at CMBD. So let's get started. 715 is the only assignment that you have to complete for this particular qualification. But there is a little bonus, because if you subsequently wanted to go on and do a level 7 in strategic management and leadership, this particular unit can be counted as prior learning towards a certificate or a diploma. So just a little bit of a bonus maybe for the future. So what's the first thing that you need to do to get started on this particular assignment? Well, when we register you with the CMI, you will receive from them a welcome email with instructions on how to access and activate a thing called Management Direct. Management Direct contains, amongst other things, a dedicated learning journey for Unit 715. This has been put together by the CMI to kind of put in one place all the things that they think you might want to have a look at and potentially use. There is also a huge library of other resources. These range from books and journals to theoretical models, etc. Once you have this access, then book an induction session with your CMBD tutor. As you may be aware, we allocate an individual to you to guide you through the process of reading, researching, writing your assignment and providing feedback on an ongoing basis. This is usually done through Zoom sessions. We have quite a good diary booking system where you could, for example, look at when I am available and book a slot for some feedback to suit yourself. So let's assume that by this point you're reasonably familiar with the contents, for example, of the learning journey for task 1. You've fired up the laptop or the PC and you're sitting looking at, hopefully, the assignment brief. That screenshot was the first couple of pages of that assignment brief, quite a lot of information on the front of it, as well as on page 2 a box which kind of breaks down the word count and the titles of the various different sections of the 2 tasks. At this point, quite a few people merrily start typing away on the assignment brief and they send me some stuff through for feedback, and it's pretty obvious that they're not aware of the other 3 documents that you need before you write anything. The first of these additional documents is the syllabus, referred to as the unit specification in the assignment brief. As you can see from that particular screenshot, this contains a huge amount of additional information. More instructions on how to approach each task and a thing called indicative content. They're literally suggesting to you what you perhaps ought to be writing about or considering in that section. I thoroughly recommend that you print that information out. It's pages 14 to 16 in the syllabus, and despite the fact we live in a digital age, this is stuff that you need by your elbow to refer to frequently. The third of our pieces of paper that we need to get started is a thing that we call the command verb definitions. Each of the sections of the assignment brief contain a command verb instruction, and if I have a look at this one here, 1.1 in Unit 715 is to critically assess structural inequality within an organisational and societal context. Other instructions might be to discuss or present or analyse. And that command verb definitions document will remind you and indicate how you need to format and approach the answers that you give. The fourth and final document that you should have access to is what we call the evidence booklet. That previous screenshot shows the first 2 pages of the evidence booklet, where we have a candidate declaration that it's your own work and that you've acknowledged sources that you might have used, and also another chart reminding you of the word count distribution between the 2 tasks. Frequently in this assignment, you may wish to refer to a policy or a strategic plan or a monitoring system or something of that nature from your workplace or the organisation that you're talking about. There are some rules attached to the use of the evidence booklet, and you can find these on the front page of the assignment brief. For example, you're not allowed to attach appendices to the assignment brief. You have to use the evidence booklet. They talk about no more than 6 pages of these, please, and they also talk about file sizes if you want to embed stuff in the document. Just a word on embedding files. We recommend that you don't if you can possibly avoid it, because we do get issues with tutors and moderators not being able to access stuff. But if you've got something that you particularly wanted to use, I suggest you discuss it with your tutor and they will give you some advice and guidance. Now, this might all seem like a huge amount of preparation and mucking about and, gathering together all the information that you need. But honestly, it's like painting and decorating. The more preparation you do, the better the finished surface is. A couple of other basic housekeeping points, please, to help us enormously. Number one, put your name in the header at the top of the assignment brief. This is a Word document that will be provided to you by your tutor. It's what you should actually do your work on. It's what you should send for feedback to your CMBD tutor, and it's what we have to submit to the CMI when we finally put your assignment in for checking. One other small favour, please, which helps us enormously. When you get the Word document template from us, can you rename the file to include your name so that we know who things are from, and that just makes life a little bit easier when you've got 6 in your folder to mark and give feedback on. And also, if you can put V1 for version 1 or V2 for version 2 when you send us an update, it makes sure that we're working on the latest copy of your work. Now, we're nearly ready to start writing answers to this assignment task, but not quite. There are 2 other things that we need to do first. The first of these is to consider the word count. Now, on page 2 of the assignment brief, you'll see the grid that tells you that you have a total of 2,000 words approximately for task 1. That task 1 consists of 1.1, 1.2, etc. There are 4 mini tasks within that. So 500 words per mini task is what we're looking at. The word count allowance can come as a bit of a shock to people doing one of these things for the first time. It's not a lot, and you have to learn to be very economical and concise with your answers. Little tip, you're not allowed to attach appendices to the assignment brief, but you are allowed to insert relevant charts or diagrams if they'll help save some words. A couple of examples might include, the diverse mix of a workforce, or a reduction in staff turnover since certain policies came into place, or things of that nature. The second thing that we suggest you do is that just under the heading for task 1, you insert maybe 120 to 150 word paragraph introducing you, tiny bit about your organisation, what you do and why you're doing a CMI assignment. This provides enormously useful context for somebody like a CMI moderator. Your personal tutor at CMBD will get to know you very well during the process of completing this assignment, but if somebody who doesn't know you picks it up to have a look at it, it's very useful for them to kind of get a bit of background. This is not included in your word count, and at the end of your paragraph you can put a little bracket provided for context, not included in word count, close bracket, and you can ignore it when you're checking your word count. So hopefully, having done all that prep and pre-work, we're now ready to look at the actual question on the assignment brief and start writing some answers. And I'm going to refer to the assignment brief which I have by my side here for this part. It may be helpful to imagine that you have been tasked with writing this report to bring to the attention of perhaps blissfully unaware or only partially aware senior people who don't realise how equality, diversity and inclusion can impact on the business or organisation. So what our report is doing is telling a kind of logical story. In 1.1, we're looking very much at some of the things that might cause issues within our business or organisation. In 1.2, we're going to look at various approaches that could be used to address some of these issues. In 1.3, we're looking at the influence that this all has on the overall strategic aims and objectives of the business. And finally, in 1.4, we're basically going to make some recommendations based on a sound business case for taking on board some of these issues. So let's look specifically at Task 1, 1.1. The first and most obvious thing that we need to pick up on, and you'd be amazed how many times it's missed, is we're told that the report should be entitled "The Compelling Case for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion at the Strategic Level," and that we must present it in 4 sections with subheadings. Now, I'm probably stating the absolutely obvious here, but the subheadings are the bits in bold type in the Task 1 instructions. So number 1.1 would be structural inequality within an organisational and societal context. And I would suggest that after that subheading, you put AC 1.1 in brackets as well. This just makes sure that the assessor or the moderator know exactly which bit you're talking about at that particular time. As well as these main subheadings, there may be other areas where we want to make something clearer by using further headings. If we're asked to consider something from 2 different viewpoints, it might make sense to label the paragraphs appropriately. So let's take a bit of a detailed look at the syllabus and the indicative content, and we'll see that on page 14 we've got structural inequality with lots of suggested factors. Over the page on 15, we've got organisational context. Does the structure of your organisation, i.e. public, private, third sector, impact in this area? And we've got a societal context as well. Changing attitudes and trends, local, regional, national issues, patterns and trends in equality. Now, when we add this to the learning journey and sort of suggested references and things, there's quite a lot. You can't address it all. So the trick is to, when you're perhaps describing your own organisation, pick out in each of these 3 areas things which are appropriate that you can use easily to make your points in your report. Picking up the assignment technique is a large part of all of this. Most people don't have a problem with the knowledge or the understanding or the interpretation of all the information. It's just the way in which you present it, being able to get as much in as possible and being realistic about how many things you can reference. Talking about referencing, 2 to 3 max per subsection in this task is more than sufficient. And Word has a really good inbuilt referencing and citation system, which if you're not familiar with, your tutor will take you through. So moving on to 1.2, where we are asked to discuss a minimum of 4 practical approaches to comply with legal and good practice requirements for equality, diversity and inclusion in an organisational context. So when we go and have a look at the indicative content in the syllabus, you need to pick out 4 approaches that you can make work and talk about. You need to talk about what legal and regulatory requirements they might address it, and the organisational context is whether your organisation or the organisation you're writing about is in the public sector, private sector, or perhaps in the voluntary sector. Just a word about the command verb for 1.2. Unlike 1.1, which was critically appraise, this one is discuss, and it's worth having a look in the command verb definitions as to what this actually means. The wording says, give a detailed account including a range of views or opinions which include contrasting perspectives. So a few examples of different perspectives. There may of course be the perspective of you as a manager, or the perspective of the staff who work for you, or a legal perspective, or even the perspective from the viewpoint of senior managers. Different opinions, obviously the most important one is your opinion. On balance, what do you think? but there may be the opinion of a theorist or a writer, or something that you've researched when you've done the background for the task. It's not a bad idea to draw a conclusion at the end of a section like this, and that may well be the best place to put your opinion. On balance, what do you think? Now for task 1.3, we're back to the critically appraise command verb, so a change of style is required. We need in this task to look at the influence of equality, diversity and inclusion on the strategic aims and objectives of the organisation. We're asked to make reference to two specific things: specific objectives for equality and the strategic objectives, which are the overarching priorities of the organisation. There's a number of suggested thought provokers in the indicative content. You're by no means confined to these. You can pick other examples if you so desire from the organisation that you're writing about. Remember the story that we're telling in our report to our mythical senior management team. 1.3 is all about pointing out to them the influence that getting this right can have on them achieving their strategic aims and objectives. So let's move on to the final part of task 1.4, where we're basically going to make a strong business case for our senior management team on why they need to get on board with this. By now you should be pretty used to diving into the indicative content and combining it with the instructions in the assignment brief. Remember that in this part of the report we're saying why we should do things based on a sound business case. The how we do things comes in task 2. See that our business case needs to cover 3 areas. It needs to cover the moral business case, and there's plenty of inspiration in the indicative content. We need to look at the financial business case for doing this, and we also need to look at the legal perspective, drawing a suitable conclusion at the end of our report. Now at this point, if you've not done so already, it's probably a very good idea to send your draft through to your CMBD tutor for feedback on assignment technique, referencing and all sorts of other bits and pieces. Okay, that concludes task 1. I hope you found it useful. We'll cover task 2 in a separate video tutorial, but for now, thank you for listening.